Good evening, and welcome to the City Council Candidate Forum. I am Joanne Muir. I'll be the moderator. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and there will be opening and closing statements by the candidates. And please turn off your cell phones. And several of the league members will be around. Raise your hand if you have a question, and they'll give you a card, and you write it on the card, and then they bring it up to me, the question to me. And it's 2 minutes for opening and closing statements and 90 seconds for responses to answers. And our phone number is down there on 405-762-6613. And Pat Mullins, a leaguer, is out in the lobby monitoring the phone. You can text or call. Thank you. And we'll start with the coin toss. Dr. Harden won, so Dr. Harden.
Call me Tim. That's
Tim, okay.
So I'm Tim Harden. I have lived here in Stillwater 7 years ago. My wife and I moved here with the intention of this becoming our forever home. We have purchased a home, and this will be our forever home unless something happens family-wise that we can't plan on. I have three primary areas of background. I was an engineer. I was educated at that little small school down in Norman, which we won't mention. Got a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering there. I worked for a major international airline. I've been a small business owner for about 15 years, and I've been an educator. At the age of 50, I decided to go back to college and get my master's and PhD in computer science at the University of Louisville. And I joined the faculty there and taught there about 6 years, I believe. And 7 years ago, we moved here for me to join Oklahoma State's Department of Industrial Engineering and Engineering and Management. And my wife, I dragged her here. She's a pediatrician. And with those three backgrounds of corporate, with engineering, and with corporate, with small business owner and educator, I think I've got a lot to offer to the city. And like I said, this is our forever home. We look for being here and making it a good place to live.
Thank you. And they will hold up signs, the timers, I forgot to mention this. They will hold up signs with 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then stop.
Did they forget for me?
Yeah, okay. Okay, and in your questions, no personal attacks, please. Okay, Nathan?
I'm Nathan Brubaker. I have been here in Stillwater for 8 years. I've been working in Stillwater for 10 years. My life has been in education. I've spent 30 years in the classroom teaching middle school and high school career tech classes, pre-engineering, engineering, manufacturing, communication, a variety of classes from drafting to robotics. So a lot of different courses there. 10 years ago, I was hired here at the state agency to come up and teach teachers how to teach. And so I've been with the agency now for 10 years, working with teachers and teaching them how to teach and do those things. Background in a wide background in a variety of things, just from my teaching experience, but also have done small business and nonprofit stuff for a long time. So I'd be honored to be your new city council person.
Thank you. Yuki?
Hello, I'm Yuki Clark. No relation to current councilor Kevin Clark. Please do not be confused by that. So I came here to Stillwater about 5 years ago as a student, like many come to Stillwater. As soon as I got here, I fell in love with Stillwater. It's my favorite place in Oklahoma, and I really got engaged with local community, getting involved with organizations and nonprofits best I could, and working towards a bachelor's in marketing. Now, couple years after I've graduated, I'm working as part of the marketing department of the OSU Alumni Association, and I really want to work towards making a better Stillwater for everyone, since this is a place I love and I want to have others love it as well. My kind of focus with it is kind of being a voice for the younger and more struggling populations in Stillwater, understanding their struggles and working towards a solution that can work for anyone, and just making sure that anything that the council does, there's a voice that represents all of Stillwater, and I would also be honored to be sitting here permanently for you.
Thank you. Okay, the first question, we'll start with Yuki. How would you approach the annual budget process to ensure resident priorities are addressed?
So I really do like what the city already does with having the online tool that you can play around with, seeing how everything balances out. Definitely want to continue that. I think definitely a lot more community engagement is good, because you just need to hear all those voices, and you need to hear like what's truly a priority and what's not. And if you really hear this is not a priority from your residents, then maybe that's something to consider. But I definitely think just building that communication, building that trust, making sure that your residents know that you're not just spending money like crazy. You actually understand what it is, why, and they can understand why you're doing it, and that it's all going to a good place.
Thank you. Nathan?
With the annual budget, being able to, yes, I agree, bring in and reach out to the public, know what they are needing around, but also we have to look at the bigger picture of what the different departments need just to make the city run and function and do its daily things. So it's a balancing act between what the citizens want and what needs it takes to run, from police to water to fire to all those different things to do those.
Tim?
So there are some basic services that cities need to provide. As mentioned, water, fire, police, sewer, electricity, streets. So those have to start first, and let's see what's left over after that. And I know here in Stillwater, we've had a lot of discussion about how bad our streets are, so we have to have a prudent plan, which they're working on right now, which is a very good idea. As far as getting citizen input, I think it's an awesome idea. One thing I've planned on doing is having a get to know the councilman once a month. I will meet, post where I'm going to be, coffee house, maybe even a brew pub. We'll see. Different parts of town. Come meet the council person, and let's talk about it. Let's find out what your inputs are. But I really want to have community input.
Thank you. Okay. Nathan, we'll start with you. What is your position on proposing legislation to allow cities to receive property tax revenue for city operations?
I am all for us watching, following, and being involved with legislation. It's something that we have to do. We can't turn a blind eye to what's going on at our capital. We need to be involved with that all the time, as far as watching legislation and what's going on. Being able to put forth whether property taxes are coming back in here. To do something like that, we're also looking at, if I'm pulling off of property taxes, we're pulling off of money that's going to the schools and different things in the county. So we have to be careful. I'd want to know more about what whoever wrote the question proposes for doing that, but I am all for doing legislation and moving things forward.
Tim?
I think the current funding model is actually enshrined in the state constitution. I would have to check on that. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that we would have to have to do a constitutional amendment to the state to enact that. I think it's a great idea. The city of Stillwater is hamstrung because roughly 1/3 of the property in the city of Stillwater does not pay tax. That includes city property, that includes university property, that includes the Greeks, includes schools, includes churches. And so when we have a property tax increase here in the city of Stillwater, it falls on the 2/3 of us that are not nonprofits. And so that's a huge issue, and that's something that really hamstrings the city of Stillwater. I would be all in favor of it, but I'm suspicious that it's going to take a constitutional amendment. It would be very hard to do.
Yuki?
I agree that opening up those revenues would be good, but I also concur with both of them on the fact that we have to see where that money is actually coming from, if it's taking it from anyone, and the actual process of how to get it. I would also like to see different revenue models, because and currently all it is all we have is sales tax. That's what the city can really pull from for most of what it can do. So I think we need to see what other options there are. Property tax is definitely one, but no matter what, as long as it doesn't hurt your average person too much, we need to figure out more revenue, because otherwise, I mean, we've already had these discussions for years upon years on how tight our budget can be and how much we can get. So we need to diversify in order to actually be able to grow and succeed as a community.
Thank you. Nathan, what plans do you have to help the homeless in Stillwater? During cold weather, is transportation provided to the Mission of Hope?
Right now, I have no plans, but I do know we work with Mission of Hope, and I know that we had a prayer request come into our church just this last week about Mission of Hope. They're really seeking new property. They want to expand and grow. They want to be a larger place where they can handle and work with more people and be able to, in these weather times, be able to bring more people in and work with them. So it's a matter of those other bodies in the city finding and locating places for them to expand, as well as looking for the dollars to help them renovate whatever they may be doing. But being able to work with them, I believe, is a big deal, because it does meet a need in our city.
Thank you. Yuki?
So helping our homeless population is a pretty multifaceted issue. Helping a Mission of Hope is definitely important. They want to expand. We definitely need that shelter space so they have a place. In cold weather, we definitely need to see if there's other places that can be opened if Mission of Hope happens to be full. And for transportation, we have only one bus that would go near it currently, which is the Scarlet route, which currently will only run till 7 p.m. and does not run on weekends. So we definitely would need to partner with churches or OSU Transit or whatever we can to make sure that that transit is actually available for people, because otherwise people get cold on weekends. We can't not just have a bus run if people need to get somewhere to stay warm. And that's going to take a lot of grants, working with not just Stillwater organizations, but state organizations to see what can happen. And also making sure that those resources for long-term recovery, no longer having to be homeless, those are met, so that it's not, we aren't expanding for the Mission of Hope or anything, for the same people, that they can find their next step.
Thank you. Tim?
One more time on the question, please.
What plans do you have to help the homeless in Stillwater? During cold weather, is transportation provided to the Mission of Hope?
Okay. So what plans do I have for the homeless? I'll come back to that. Is transportation provided? I don't think it is right now. As Yuki said, I think the bus routes stop early in the evening. But I think that would be a very easy thing to particularly address. Churches have vans, churches have buses. And I would think that a number of churches would say, if you need a transportation to a warm place, here's the phone number, call us, we will get you there. I think the private sector could handle that pretty easily. As far as the homeless, that's another issue. We talk about the homeless as a homogeneous group, and that is not a homogeneous group. There are many reasons for homelessness. Some people are down on their luck, they've lost a job and don't have a place to live. Some people have drug issues, some people have mental health issues. There's a lot of issues there, and to attack the whole problem of homelessness, I firmly believe that you have to deal with each person one-on-one to find out what is their situation and what can we do. I don't think there's a blanket fix for the homeless issue.
Thank you. Tim, we'll start with you. Any ideas on how to reconcile the need for infrastructure improvement and the lack of an adequate tax base for Stillwater?
Whoever wrote that, if you've got a great idea, I'd love to talk to you. That comes back to what we were just talking about. The city is stuck with this funding model of real property taxes can only go to reduce bonds, and sales tax can only be used for operating funds. And we're stuck with that. We have to deal with it. At some point, we're going to have to find a way to probably increase property taxes to do a major street improvement situation. I know we have a street improvement plan. I believe it comes in that they look at the streets every 6 years and they go through street by street, block by block, and identify which ones are in the worst need and rank them and go back and work on those. And that's the priority system as far as what it takes to get our streets back in order. I also understand with our current funding model that using that street improvement plan, we have 65 years before we get all the streets looked at. So we have a problem.
Yuki?
So yeah, definitely we concur with that, is that we have limited resources what we currently can do with our tax base. So part of our options are grants, really trying to find those dollars, see if there's anything that can be brought in. But maybe also working with developers as we, especially in downtown and other places, as we build up, maybe there are ways that we can kind of partner, work with these developers saying, hey, you help with the street that you're going to be adding more traffic to, we'll give you X, or kind of figure out what options there are. Because, yeah, we have over 60 years worth of roads to fix. So I think really working with those developers, really working with anyone who's working with those, with our infrastructure, that we should see if we can have them help cover the cost and work with them to make sure that we can all benefit in the end.
Nathan?
65 years to catch up on roads. That's a long time, and it kind of goes back to our first questions about budget. You know, it's that balance in our budget. How do we move money, and what becomes the priority? What is the main thing? So how do we do that? And there aren't easy answers. There's never easy answers when doing budgets and trying to fix what needs to be fixed. So it's one of those that we have to work at it, and it's I mean, no matter who gets elected, there's other people up here and they'll all have their own ideas, and we're all going to have a different idea. City manager's got a different idea, so it's a matter of trying to come together and figure out how we can do it the best way to get what needs to be done and make those priorities and get them done. And I'd love to be able to move faster on it and do some other things with it, but it is a matter of priorities.
Thank you. Tim, we'll start with you. What do you think Stillwater can do to create more affordable housing?
I've heard many folks talk about the difficulty it is getting a subdivision approved through the planning process in the city of Stillwater. I am not firsthand knowledge of that situation, but I've heard that many times over, how difficult it is to get subdivisions and infill housing approved through the planning commission and through the city council and through the city staff. And that cannot be. If we want to improve housing, we need to find a way to smooth that process to make sure that we have housing that's affordable. And it's not just affordable, but I'll say affordable housing, and any development has a good look and a smooth process to get through the process such that it can move forward. I think there's quite a few projects right now that are on the shelf waiting approval, waiting some step. So I'd like to see that logjam addressed and broken.
Nathan?
Affordable housing. Housing in Stillwater is ruled by renters, and rent tends to guide everything that's in Stillwater. And when you can make more renting a property than selling it, and then to sell it, you'd have to sell it a larger price to make up what you could get for it out of rent. Rent rules our property, and I don't know that there's, like everything else, I don't know that there's a good solution for that, other than we start looking at the rental properties and trying to do something to make that more attractive, or do something with rentals. But I mean, that's not going to go away. I mean, we're a college town. They demand rentals, and they want those. So that's the problem with the affordable housing, is you're always going to be butt up against rental property.
Yuki?
So I think with the affordable housing, it's not just the houses that you can buy, it is also rent, because here in Stillwater, not just students rent, a lot of people here rent. People who don't know if they're going to be here for a couple years, people who are lower income and can't afford a down payment, or will even get approved for a mortgage for a house. So with building more housing, developers want profit. And what brings in profit are more expensive homes. So you have to balance that and give them an incentive to to build housing that may not be as profitable as, say, a $300,000 or $400,000 house on the edge of town. And also with renting, it's also to make sure that those rent prices don't keep growing at a more than market rate, because eventually our wages and our costs will overtake. Like, you won't be able to pay rent if rent is higher than what someone would make, at Walmart or at McDonald's, working and trying to make a living and just getting by. So you have to make sure that that's in mind, and there are, if not controls, at least incentives, so that we can make sure that kind of rent stays down and keeps people in Stillwater and keeps people housed and happy.
Okay, Nathan, I'll start with you. What do you consider to be the three most significant changes needed in Stillwater? What can we do to move toward these changes?
Three most significant changes in Stillwater. Well, we need more business, because business drives our people, jobs, and everything else. So we're a growing community as it is, and so we're always going to need more business. But with that, the college has also said they're planning on growing. That's their goal, is to expand their student base and get more people in, which with that and with new business, then we're back to that housing problem again, needing more housing. I mean, and doing that. And then once we get there, as we grow, infrastructure then becomes the next biggest problem, is trying to make sure that we're keeping up the new building areas as well as the old areas and established areas in the city.
Thank you. Yuki?
So, housing definitely is one of our biggest issues. We already talked about that in our previous question. I think another big factor here is, I won't say just jobs, but I think the sense of opportunity in Stillwater is something that we can definitely grow on. Maybe is that jobs? Is that building a business? Is that knowing that you can start a family and have things to do for your kid and can feel like that you can have a life here instead of just live here, go eat, go to the shop, and that's about it. And then, of course, our infrastructure and our transportation. I think one of our big things that we could definitely lean on is more active non-car transportation. We already have a lot of cyclists. We already have lots of pedestrians that walk around, not just college students, but just locals. And we are a perfectly designed place that if we put a little extra effort into that, we can have an easily accessible, walkable, great place to live. And that kind of thing will drive people to feel like this is a vibrant community.
Thank you. Tim?
So my colleagues have already talked about business and jobs, infrastructure. I won't go into that, but to me, quality of life is something we need to talk about. And Yuki mentioned it, but quality of life means how easy is it to live here? How much do people want to come and live here? How easy is it to recruit companies to come here because their employees want to live in Stillwater? So I think we need to address quality of life. And one thing I'm very happy that's happened within the last year is the big donation toward Block 34, $10 million to Block 34. Thank you very much, Kicker. Another $1.5 million to Block 34. Thank you very much, Simmons Bank. Those are private funds that are going in that would never have happened if we were waiting on the city to fund that. And those will provide activities. They will provide fun places for kids to go and play. Entertainment on the weekends, free of charge. I think that's going to be a really big thing, and I'm very happy that's something that's going on right now.
Thank you. We'll start with Tim this time.
Me, okay.
As Stillwater's population increases, the lack of the ability to tax OSU, do you have any initiatives toward thinking ways to provide the money necessary to support the increased needs of infrastructure, education, and parks?
Oh, okay. I hate to say it, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that one more time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We've kind of touched on it, most of it. As Stillwater's population increases, the lack of the ability to tax OSU, do you have any, I'm going to say ideas, forward-thinking ways to provide the most measure to support the increased needs in infrastructure, education, and parks? Did you understand it?
I'll try to answer
Repeat it.
I'll try to answer what I think the question was.
Okay. That'll make two of us.
Okay. So part of the question was, as OSU grows, how do we support that growth of population from OSU? As I mentioned before, we don't tax anything owned by OSU, and I believe that's actually set forth in that there were Supreme Court decisions many years ago that one government entity cannot tax another one. So I don't think there's much we can do about that. But OSU students have been known to come to town and spend their money. And when they spend their money, that generates sales tax dollars. So that's one thing we have built into the system as we grow with OSU. Now, the rest of it, I'm sorry, I was a little bit lost on. I'm going to stop right there. That's all I can answer.
Okay.
That's all I can discern out
Okay,
of
it's
that question.
pretty- All right, Yuki?
So definitely, since we can't tax them, there are limited things we can do. And one of the things we can't do is really raise the sales tax much more. We're already at nearly 10%. And I'm sure everyone here has been shopping to get groceries, and you probably have felt that higher tax rate that we've had. But it's a good thing. We need the extra money for roads, but we've hit the point where just continuously raising the sales tax won't fix anything, or it'll harm more people than it would help in the end, with how many people have limited budgets. So really, a lot of what you have to do is just partner with outside organizations, partner with local organizations, get those private dollars, and try to bring in that investment in so that we can balance out the tax with a willing incentive to build our community better, so that we can mitigate what will happen when OSU keeps growing and we'll have more people on our roads and in our shops and everything, but that we can help, but we can still do something about it.
Nathan?
I agree with what they've both said about this, but I also think we're avoiding OSU. Yeah, they're not paying tax, but they have a wealth of people and energy and things going on there. So that's where we use their people to design and build parks and areas that those kids would use, that we would put those, that they would have a part in. We use them to come in and partner with us. We partner with them, and they partner with us to look at, to build, design, and possibly even figure out how to best pay for that. It may be a partnership of some sort there, but let's use them to help partner with what's going on.
Thank you. What type of volunteer work are you involved in, and how does it help the community? Tim?
Okay. So my volunteer work, let me run down the list. I am a volunteer for Our Daily Bread. I pick up food weekly from Sprouts and take it to Our Daily Bread. Leftover food like produce, canned goods, dairy, deli, that goes to Our Daily Bread. I help fill backpacks for kids once a month. That is food that goes to kids that don't have that have food insecurity over the weekends. Through my church, we have a little free pantry, which is a take what you need, leave what you can program. I refill that 2 or 3 times a week. Let's see, what else have I done volunteer-wise? Well, actually, I've served on the Airport Advisory Board. That doesn't get paid. And I serve on the Board of Adjustment for the city, which doesn't get paid. So I guess those could be considered volunteer activities also.
Thank you. Yuki?
So I do what I can with volunteering. I work full time, so that takes up a good chunk of my time. So I'm not able to. I would love to have a long list of volunteer efforts like that, but I physically cannot. As I do right now, I currently am the chair of the Payne County Democrats, kind of working towards helping candidates, helping initiatives, and well, a lot of what I do honestly is connecting different activism organizations and different groups around with each other, and trying to build an understanding of each other's groups. I also help out with a bunch of students on campus, helping with kind of advice and guidance and support, especially as they grow into becoming a full-fledged adult. I I am a member of the Sister Cities Council, which is a Stillwater City initiative to kind of work with a partnership on with our sister city in Japan, Kamioka. And I previously, before the pandemic kind of shut it down, I was also a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Ad Hoc Committee, back with our previous city engineer, trying to make sure that a lot of what I mentioned before about transportation and active transportation is always a part of every city plan.
Thank you. Nathan?
I too have a full-time job, but I am very proud of, I work at Career Tech, and we were in the top 10 donating to Payne County United Way. And we have a very active United Way campaign within our agency that it seems like it's a 2-month stretch that we have all sorts of crazy things going on. We really do. You need to come and join, or at least come to the auction every year, because there's a lot going on there with that. Outside of that, my wife does run a nonprofit here in Stillwater, and so I am active in that sometimes, whether I want to be or not. And then I do take part in my church activities too. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Nathan. Given recent spike in crime, how do you see the council assisting in addressing this issue?
Goes back to our early question about budget. That's the building right next door, the police department. How do we make sure that as we are a growing community, that we do have sufficient staffing within our police department that can cover and reach the far edges of our town, that they are able to have good response times, be able to get out and do what they need to do, as well as hire those specialty officers, the undercover people, whoever they need to be, hopefully getting ahead of the curve on some of things that we never know about. And thankfully, we're kind of glad we don't know about some of the things that go on. But that they have those people there and are ready to do what needs to be done.
Yuki?
I definitely agree that we do need to make sure our police are well funded and well trained. So I think I'm going to also bring up a few other points of, for many crimes, a lot of it is opportunity and poverty based. A lot of times they'll do it because they feel like they have no choice, or they're stressed and down on their luck, or they have mental illness or something. There's multiple different ways of how crime can happen besides it just being a bad guy doing bad things. So I think a lot of it is hitting that crime at its source, making it where the reasons that crime happened don't need to happen anymore, and building that community up so they don't feel like they have to have it. And also, in other cities I've had this, and we would definitely have to see how the grants would work, but also maybe not just having police officers respond, but depending on what it is, having mental health experts respond. And so that if that's what's needed, then the person that is involved can get treatment instead of just, sorry, you're getting locked up now. And make it where, in the end, we can have more productive citizens instead of just more people in jail.
Tim?
So in addition to adequate police force, I think we need to have the police with adequate equipment. I had a chance to meet with our police chief a few weeks ago and discuss one of these topics, and he brought up how old many of their vehicles are, and how they've been on a hiatus of being able to replace vehicles. So that's one thing we need to be aware of. The crimes of opportunity, I totally agree with, but I think a lot of crimes also are drug-related, and so we need to have some response there. I recently heard that the dial 9888 number, used to be 911 for emergency, dial 988 is an intervention program for people that are in crisis. And the police use that now, and they actually provide folks that are not police officers to respond to some situations. So I think that's a great thing. I don't think it's been fully staffed yet, but hopefully it will be. Believe that was provided by the state, and that's one of the great things the state has done.
Okay, we'll start with you, Tim.
Okay.
Think outside the box. Where could we go for new money that is not available now?
I'm tempted to be humorous about that, but I won't be. I think we need to look at public-private partnerships where tax base is stretched pretty much to the limit. As I mentioned before, I'm thrilled about the donations to Block 34, to Washington School, to the new NICU at the hospital. I recently became aware of a public-private partnership, SASA, and I'm going to butcher the name of it, Stillwater Athletic Scholastic Association. I could be wrong on that. Thank you. And that was a situation. It's a public-private partnership that has taken over the swimming pool, taken over tennis courts, taken over basketball courts, gyms, the armory. I think that's a great idea that relieved a burden from the city. And I think that other such funding vehicles of public-private partnerships are definitely a very real possibility and something we should look into.
Yuki?
Yeah, definitely. That is something I kind of already touched on a lot with my answers, is the finding those grants, finding those partnerships. There is money out there that we can get for different projects. We just have to know what we want and what we're doing and have a good plan of how we're doing it. And we have a good chance of getting those kind of grants. It's just, it's always a process to do that, but it is possible. Also, a lot of it is just working with our state and federal legislators to have more opportunities for those kind of grants and funding and availability. Otherwise, yeah, we're kind of, unless new taxes for us can just suddenly appear, or new tax versions can suddenly appear, we're at our limit. So we just need to find any source we can and really build up that feeling of, you're not just giving because we're asking, you're giving to make this city a better place for generations to come.
Nathan?
Well, one of the best things to do is to make this a place where business wants to come and settle down, to where we can have businesses move into and add to that tax base here within the community and do things. So, yeah, outside of pushing out our city borders and making the town bigger, which then is a catch-22, because then our infrastructure has to grow too, which means we have to spend more money. But it is kind of a rock and a hard place. So moving in and getting more businesses and continuing to grow our business community within the city is a very good way of bringing those tax dollars in.
All right, we'll start with you, Nathan.
Okay.
On February 14th, one item on the ballot is the 3.8% sales tax increase. How would you promote the increase to lower income folks who carry the larger portion than those in higher income ranges?
Okay, is that the counties? 3/8?
County's 3/8.
But I didn't think it was an increase. I thought that was a flat, it's staying the same. It's the same. So I'm thinking that question is not quite right. I think it is stays the same. So it's a no change, basically.
Okay. So, Yuki, you want to address it?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing. Since it's already existing, it's a pretty easy pitch of just, let's keep it going. This is a vital area of funding that they're already used to and been used to for years. but past that, it's already there. We should keep it because that is a vital source of income for the county and helps a little bit with us too. So, yeah, it just keep going.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, if you want to.
Sure. So the 3/8 cents is a county sales tax. It is renewing an existing sales tax, which, as they've said, is not a tax increase. It's renewing an old sales tax. It provides for fire protection. It provides for protection for the county sheriff. It provides for there's funding that goes into the not the agri center, but the conventions that thing out. Thank you, Expo Center. Thank you so much. And it does provide services for everybody in Payne County. And there are a lot of folks in Payne County that deserve fire protection, that deserve sheriff's protection. So I think it's critical that it be renewed. Oh, it also covers roads, and roads are a big deal in the county also, in case you haven't driven outside the city limits lately.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Okay, Yuki, we'll start with you on this one. If the road issue is this bad, what are we going to do about ensuring the city's water supply? Isn't that a big problem? Though we don't seem to be talking about it as much as streets.
Well, roads are talked about more because everyone has to drive on them, use them every day. But the water issue is currently being addressed, and we are trying to find the grants, and we do have grants for that, especially trying to repair and keep going our main water pipe out to our primary reservoir that, gives our city water. But with that, with our current infrastructure, it's kind of making sure that we keep thinking about it, keep talking about it. The staff are going to be aware of it. The city engineers are going to be aware of that. And if there is new road work, especially if it's private, we need to make sure that we have a partnership with them to, if the water infrastructure next to the road they're working on or the property they're working on is in a state of need, that we partner with them and make sure that it's being fixed and that it can be repaired, and we can keep up with our water infrastructure with that.
Nathan?
Yeah, roads are bad, but yes, water is a big deal too, and it's big in that, we need more supply to come in, but it's also big in that because we've pushed out north and south here in Stillwater, is making sure that we have the pressure we need all the way out into the homes as well as to the fire lines to make sure we've got what we need, because we need that. The proper pressure and being able to have some of those things out there allows us to have a better insurance rating as far as fire and insurance, those things.
Okay, Tim?
So the line that provides our water supply from Caw Lake is over 40 years old. And it is such that we cannot shut it down to inspect it. So we really don't know how good or how bad a shape it's in. They know of leaks they've had, but there's really hardly any way to repair them. There is a plan to build a second line from our water treatment plant over to, I believe it's Lake McMurtry or Carl Blackwell, one of the two. I'm sorry, I don't remember which. That would put water into that lake and would be used as a reservoir for opportunities to take down the main pipeline so it can be at least inspected and potentially repaired. The city has an agreement with Oklahoma State University, Oklahoma State, to provide water to the city in an emergency situation. Unfortunately, that emergency level of supply that they can supply is a winter supply level with no irrigation, no major fires, and hardly any cooling towers running. So they could provide a little bit to us, but we are in a situation where we need to look at it. There is a process for grants. Some money's been set aside and has been found for design of this alternate pipeline. And we need to keep our foot on the pedal to keep that in the process to make sure we don't find ourselves without water here one of these days.
Start with Nathan. Stillwater Planning Commission, I guess, has approved nearly 100 dispensary licenses with recreational marijuana. Do you anticipate a large business turnover in the next few years, or will Stillwater become the marijuana capital of Oklahoma, or some other option?
Well, if you've paid attention, we have lost a few, just attrition. Normal business habits they can't sustain what they have there, but you will also see in the coming months, and hopefully sooner than that, a lot more are being shut down by the state because they are hiring people and following the law and trying to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing or doing what they say they're doing, and they're doing it the right way. So the laws are still being adjusted. There are some on the books to go before the legislative body this year. Out of the 3,000 bills that went up there, there are some new ones that have come up about that too, but it's an ongoing process. So it is taking place. Our police force here are willing to do whatever it takes to enforce. It's just they need to know what boundaries they have from the state that they can work with. And as the state gets its act together and starts pushing out, then our people can push there too.
Thank you. Yuki?
Just make sure that question say recreational, because that's not legal yet in Oklahoma.
Recreational marijuana.
Okay. So I'm just going to say that recreational marijuana is not yet legal in Oklahoma. There is a state question vote on March 7th, and that will determine. But obviously we do have medical marijuana, which does require some extra steps, though not realistically a lot. I do agree that we need to make sure that we're enforcing our laws on it, and that the health regulations are being enforced as well with those. But it's a new industry, just kind of like how tech was 20 years ago. Everyone wanted to be in it, and then everyone realized they can't all make money. So that's why we're seeing them that close. So I'm not too worried about the sheer amount of dispensaries that have been approved, because those are not all going to stay. We're already seeing it settle, and we just need to make sure that they're following the law, making sure that everyone is doing their part, and that what they're selling is good, and what they're selling is not going to harm.
Thank you. Tim?
So my understanding is the city has no enforcement power on anything to do with marijuana. That enforcement is held to the state. So we don't have a lot we can do here in the city. Even granting licenses for dispensaries is set by decision of the voters when they legalize medical marijuana. The city has no say over that. I was truly surprised at how many dispensaries have popped up, and truly surprised that more of them have not gone out of business. I really thought that the law of supply and demand would take some down. Where they are selling it and how they're staying open is beyond me. I have no earthly idea how that's going. But as far as enforcement. That's up to the state. If we're not happy with the enforcement of the grow operations and with the enforcement of the distribution operations, we need to talk to our state legislators, to our governor, to work on stricter enforcement. And I totally agree, there's a lot of, there's been a lot in the news of grow operations staffed by folks that were not in the country legally, and so those need to be reviewed and potentially shut down. A lot of medical marijuana grow licenses have been issued to shell corporations also, and held in an Oklahoman's name, but actually held for somebody outside the state of Oklahoma, which is in contravention of the current law. So I think we need a lot more enforcement, but again, that falls back to the state.
Okay. Well, this is another one on marijuana.
Oh,
We'll start with Nathan. If recreational marijuana is legalized as of the vote May 8th, what do you see as both benefits and the concerns?
Well, benefits, I see very few. I mean, it's no longer for medical reasons now. It is purely recreational, and when it gets into that type stuff, then you're going to see same thing you have with recreational alcohol or anything else, that then it becomes a problem with our city police department as far as policing that. How do we make sure that things aren't out of hand, that they're not publicly intoxicated, driving intoxicated, those type things. So it becomes, I don't see the benefits other than I get to have my own way if I like to smoke marijuana or eat marijuana. But outside of that, I don't see the benefits.
Thank you. Tim?
well, the one benefit that has been discussed in legalizing medical marijuana or recreational marijuana is that it will increase sales taxes and will increase income. I'll let that go. It probably does. I have not seen the latest statistics on that. As far as recreational marijuana, I'm not sure that we're very far away from recreational marijuana anyway, considering how easy it is to get a medical license, a medical card. There was a line of people at one of the dispensaries here lately, lined up, waiting to get to get a provider to get a medical marijuana card, and the average wait time, or the average time in with the service provider, was 75 seconds. That's how long it took to get a medical marijuana card. So I don't think there's really a big issue of whether it's going to be a lot more folks using or not. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, back on supply and demand, I have no idea how all these dispensaries have stayed in business.
Yuki?
Yeah, I do agree that for the most part we are effectively a legalized state with extra steps. Legalization does come with a few differences though, because then there are different. There's going to be different. How much THC can be in marijuana that's sold recreational versus medically, and all this other kind of stuff. And there is going to be a different license. So we will also see a bit more in licenses being redone for that. There is a concern of it being like alcohol. So, but if we treat it like, if we already accept alcohol and we work towards fixing that, then we should have no real issues with just doing the same thing with legal marijuana. Sales tax will grow. States that have had full legalization of marijuana have seen massive booms in their tax revenue. I don't know if we'll see that as much since we're kind of starting to get late into the game of the legalization of marijuana. But I think another thing that'll be good is just there'll be less worries of charging people on these on these marijuana charges if they don't have their cards or anything, if it's legalized anyway. I feel like that would open up police manpower to other more important areas of even just marijuana. And we don't have to worry about enforcement of just having it or worrying about what people are doing with it, just that they're not going to harm anyone else while doing it.
Thank you. Nathan?
I already did.
He's already answered that.
Have
Yeah.
you?
Yes.
Okay.
The last one.
All right.
Did I answer that one?
Yeah, you
Yes.
did.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
you
the,
did.
I'm the
Thank
last
you.
one of this.
Okay.
Okay.
Yuki, how do you feel about community events and programs that promote diversity and inclusion, such as Pride and Booker T. Washington School Project?
I mean, it's very important that we show that. People learn when they realize there's people that are different than them around. People open their worldview, and we can't ignore that people like that are around. I mean, we have a major university in our background. There are going to be Muslim, international, Asian, gay, whatever students, and we have those people that just live here in Stillwater as well. And so promoting that, having that understanding makes us a better community. It makes us a more united community when we realize that that person isn't just trans or black or whatever. They are a person, they are my community member, they are a friend of in my own city. So the promotion of that is very important and will always be important.
Nathan?
I'll take the opposite view. I do not think that's a city thing. I don't think that's something that we should be involved with. That's more of a social issue that should be handled elsewhere. But as a city, I don't think we should be dealing with that.
Tim?
So a couple of things there. If an organization wants to use the city park for a function, I think they have a right to use the city park for a function, regardless of what the organization is. Yuki's been pretty eloquent in recognizing diversity, and I totally agree with that. I'd like to talk about the Booker T. Washington School for a second. That is a school that represents a community that was here and almost wiped out some 20 or 25 years ago. And I believe that it's awesome that somebody's donated money to acquire Booker T. Washington School by the city, and it will have to be refurbished. And I was asked the question in the paper, what do I see about that? I believe the community surrounding the Booker T. Washington School and the survivors of that group need to decide what that school should represent. I don't think the city should have a whole lot to say about that besides keep it between the rails. That should be a place that the community recognizes in an appropriate way, whether it's a museum, whether it's a community center, whether it's a gymnasium, whatever. I think the community representing the Booker T. Washington School represents should make the decision on the direction for that to go. And by the way, I understand that there's no additional city funds dedicated to that. That's perfectly fine. There will be some grant opportunities to raise some money to finish that. And we also have the issue that it's in the floodplain. I'll discuss that another time.
Thank you. Nathan, we'll start with you.
Sure.
What are your plans for assuring Stillwater citizens have adequate opportunity to provide input on issues or concerns to you?
Well, get one of my business cards. It's got my number. Call me. That's one of the things, open communication, being able to have a line that you can speak to me and get answers, but citizens need to be able to speak to their council, be able to voice those opinions, and we need to be where we can keep track of what's being asked, what the complaints are, what are the good things going on in town, where do where do we want things done? But that's part of being a citizen and helping the city move in the direction they want it to move.
Okay, Tim?
I am fortunate that I am retired, so I do have some time to do things like this. I'm involved in volunteer programs, and that puts me in touch with a lot of folks from a lot of different backgrounds. I welcome their input. I think I mentioned earlier that at least once a month I will invite folks to come to a place somewhere, whether it's a coffee shop or, smilingly I said, a brew pub, and come meet your city council person. In addition to that, I really think that it's critical that we have people out in the community. I am involved with, tonight I went to a program that's kicking off Healthy Communities, Healthy Children. And I will be a part of that. The idea there is to find a way to provide affordable childcare to the entire community. And that's something that's really critical that we really need here in Stillwater. It's very difficult for a single mother with 2 children to get a job and to keep a job, or to even go to the doctor. So that's something that I think is critical. I'll be involved in that as that program goes along, and we'll see what happens with it. But I tend to stay involved.
Thank you. Yuki?
I think another thing that would be really good, and something I want to be, is just be visible in the community, and just wherever I am open to discussion, open to talking, as well as having time set aside for people. I think our representative, state representative Trish Ranson does a good job of this, where she'll have her own, coffee with Trish, but also she'll just be everywhere. You can just run into her at Walmart and talk with her, or she'll be at this function, or she'll be at this event. And I think that's a great thing to emulate, because it shows that you're not just someone who has the position, but someone who knows that they have a position because of you, and that they should always be listening to you, and knows that as an elected official, their ears should always be open, even if someone isn't actually talking to them about a city issue. Just hearing if they have anything they're chatting about, and realizing, oh, this is an issue that we can talk about. So I think just always being out in the community, being open, being ready to talk, and just listening and making sure we have a pulse of the city.
Thank you. Please, Yuki, we'll start with you. Please give your thoughts on the report on city parks done last year by an Oklahoma City consultant.
I'm not very familiar with that since that was last year and doesn't sound like it's from us. I do know we have a variety of parks, and some are very good, and some are just literal grass, which is fine. We do have some ways to go on what we do, but I think we have a very good balance of our parks, especially with the activities and recreational opportunities we have, especially with the new park and like the new playground in Strickland Park that's very open and accessible to everyone, as well as all the opportunities for sports and just any other types of activities. And just honestly, a lot of it also is just nice green space. We just need more green space is always good. So while sadly I cannot specifically answer that question, our parks, we can improve our parks, but we have a good starting point for where our parks are right now.
Nathan?
I don't know anything about what they're talking about either, but I agree. I think we need green space. Green space is always good. I think it needs to be planned with every new section that we're building, that as we try to expand and build new community areas, I believe that green space needs to be built into that. That's just something that needs to happen. So, and we have green space out there. Some of, like she said, some of it is just grass and maybe a bench, and could use a little extra, but we do have green space out there.
Tim?
when you read that, my eyebrows shot up like, oh my goodness, what? I've heard about this somewhere. Let me see if I can dust off my brain. I seem to recall that part of that report was talking about we have lots of parks, but we don't have a Parks and Recreation department to manage them. And I also recall that report was critical of this. There was something about being critical of the city, and I don't recall the details. But there was even discussion about closing some parks and selling off the property. And I'm not. If that's what it was, I am not a fan of that whatsoever. And if I'm wrong about what my memory says about that, then chalk it up to a dusty brain.
Okay, thank you. Tim, we'll start with you.
Okay.
What specific training or experience do you have that will enable you to evaluate economic data for proposed city projects and manage or oversee approved projects?
I'm going to answer what I think that question said. What training do I have to evaluate economic
Data.
data? Okay. So that's an easy one for me to answer. As an educator, I taught a course called Engineering Economics, and that course is literally the evaluation of large projects, the financial evaluation of large projects. It could vary anywhere from the acquisition of 3 police cars to replace 3 old run-down police cars to try to have a lower maintenance cost on it, to major construction projects, to something like a water line, the major water line. So I have actually had training, and that was part of my teaching experience at the at Oklahoma State and at University of Louisville.
Thank you. Nathan?
My background doesn't give me large project as far as dealing with budgets and different things. My background, I've been the treasurer for our State Teachers Association for many years. I was the treasurer for that group, but it's a line by line, looking at it every year and seeing where the money's going out and what money's coming in. And so the zeros after it doesn't really make the difference. It's just looking at the items and the things that are happening all the time. I mean, I pursue our state budget all the time. It's just part of my job is to watch the state budget because I work for a state organization. I want to know how much we're going to have to spend in our organization too. So it's looking at those dollars line by line and seeing what's going on.
Yuki?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And also, part of my background with business and marketing is the analytics side of it. What does this mean? How can I learn what this means? And also just what the financial numbers mean. So a lot of it is just going to be looking, line by line, seeing what it is, seeing if there's any anomalies with things, but also just making sure that if I really don't know something, I'm not afraid to ask an expert, ask a third-party expert, making sure that what I'm seeing is truly what's going on and there's not something else I'm missing or over analyzing and misunderstanding, and just making sure that I have that extra voice. But in the end, it's just balancing out what we can do and just making sure that we know what we're looking at.
Thank you. Nathan, you answered
There's
that,
more
right?
questions?
Yeah, there's more questions.
We still got 15 minutes of this.
Okay.
Okay. So, a school bond issue will be on the ballot. Are you supportive of the school bond? Tim?
In a word, absolutely.
Okay.
I can go into more detail. There's been some discussion about exactly what that bond issue is going to cover. There's been issues with the bond issue since it was announced that interest rates have gone up, construction prices have gone up, so the scope of what they're going to be able to accomplish with that bond issue is having to be pared back to some extent. But I look at the shopping center on Boomer, which I refer to as the Wall Shopping Center, and anything that replaces that with modern buildings, I think is going to be a really good thing. And that's another one of these that will not increase your tax rates.
Yuki?
Yeah, definitely agree. I remember when this was first discussed back, or at least not first discussed, when I first heard about the rumblings of this, I think it was 4 years ago. They were talking about replacing the Cimarron Plaza with a better school, which I definitely agree. We need it. Our current school is older. Our current school needs some repairs, and we're at the point where a bigger, better building that's built for a future of Stillwater, more than just today, Stillwater, is a great opportunity. We just have to make sure that those businesses that are left in the Cimarron Plaza, we can find homes for them, that they're not just left in the dust, and we're just like, sorry, we have a new high school, figure it out. We have to make sure that they have a home and that they can continue improving our community by being there. But in the end, this bond is important. Vote yes. It's desperately needed.
Nathan?
I may be the only dissenting vote, but it's not a complete dissenting vote on voting for it. I have worked in lots of different schools and dealt with a lot of different bonds and stuff, but yeah, I realize inflation is a moving target right now, and that hits construction, but a good bond issue should tell exactly what it's going to do. And if that means they need to chunk it up to where they're only giving you a piece at a time, then that's what they need to do. It really needs to be broken down so that the taxpayer knows what they're getting with that. And it's starting to sound like they can't do it all at once anyway. So let's pick out the main thing and do it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Nathan. How do you provide for better communication between Spanish speakers and English speakers in Stillwater?
Where it needs a little more context to that. Personally, I haven't, outside of, I work with construction people, and within the construction business, there are a lot of Spanish-speaking folks there. But usually within the construction industry, they have bilingual folks that work within that too. So without specifics, it's kind of hard to know how we can help.
Okay, Tim?
Like it or not, Spanish is the #2 language in the United States, and it's growing, and we're going to have to learn to deal with it. I'm a big fan of foreign language being taught in schools, in the school system. I believe that Will Rogers has something like 14 or 15 different native languages being spoken amongst their students, and they deal with it very well. It's something I'm going to have to do. I'm a big believer in teaching Spanish in schools to give students to give people at least a chance to have a modicum of communication. One thing that I did was involved in, is that 1 minute to go or is that 1 minute left?
No,
1 minute to go. One thing that I did this last couple of years was my Rotary Club was involved in acquiring bilingual books English and Pashto for the Afghan folks that came to Stillwater. And I reached out to various community clubs, and we bought hundreds of books for Will Rogers School that were bilingual, primers, literally colors, numbers, letters, and basic words, dogs, cats, that sort of thing, for the Afghan immigrant population that was going to Will Rogers School. So again, I'm a big believer in language education. English is our first language. That's what it needs to be, but we need to be able to communicate with our citizens.
So I think we need to build having Spanish availability for communications, documents, whatever is relevant to be in Spanish. We need to build that into how we communicate. If that is with having bilingual staff in the communications department in the city, so that things that are important to everyone are in Spanish, or it might even be partnering with OSU to see, like in their Spanish department, seeing if there's things that we should have translated so that our Spanish-speaking community can not only understand what's going on, but can still engage with us, even if English is not their first language or a language they speak well. We definitely need to make sure that's part of our community, and we do already kind of do that. We've seen the city and the library have had bilingual signs and materials before, but we just need to make that a default instead of a secondary thought. And also just know what our Spanish-speaking population wants to see in their language and wants to engage in, so that we can keep everyone informed.
Thank you. Yuki, we'll start with you. Projects and ordinances last longer than the term of office and city staff employment. How do you plan to ensure consistent management and statute interpretation over time when new faces are constantly changing?
So there's not a way you can fully future-proof that. When you are a city councilor or staff or anything in a long-running organization, you expect that things that you plant the seeds of are going to become trees long after you're termed out or no longer working there. I think a lot of it is just making sure that we have institutional knowledge that always passes between people. I've seen that in my own jobs before, that if someone important leaves and they didn't leave documentation or what they were doing or how they did it, then it's just kind of up in the wind, and you're just you have to figure it out yourself. And we can't have that in a city that's supposed to be running 24/7 for its citizens. So keeping that institutional knowledge, just making sure there's always just that handshake when someone leaves and someone new comes in. And if it's an ordinance that needs to stay longer, just making sure that it has an end date that is for the time it needs, and having it where setting it up to succeed with funding or whatever it needs, so that the next person doesn't have to worry about do they need to kick it off or like kick it out or end it or whatever they need to do.
Tim?
Yuki stole my thunder on this one. So first, I think ordinances need to be clear so that they can be understood, can be enforced consistently. That's one thing we as city council can do. Many ordinances, I believe, should have a sunset clause in them that after a certain period of time, they disappear. That's a great idea. That's Yuki's thought. Thank you very much. There was a concept that went around management some years ago called the learning organization. And an organization has its own knowledge base. And that knowledge base is very hard to document because it's from person to person to person to person. And there is not a way to really institutionalize that knowledge. I've seen companies try that with flaming failure. And all I can say as city council, the two things we can do is make sure our ordinances are clear, understandable, and if they need to be for a finite period, that they have a sunset clause.
Thank you. Nathan?
I'd agree with both of those. Adding on to that, in that the thing that you can pass on and make sure that is transmitted is processes and procedures, and making sure that those are in writing. I mean, institutional knowledge is a hard thing to pass on because it is something that they're carrying around in noggins, and unless they told somebody, that's not done. But as much as you can, write down process procedures, and they can be passed on from one to the next.
We have time for one more question. Would you agree shutting down business if there is a recurrence of COVID-19 infections? Did I let you answer that? Yeah, I did. Yeah, okay. Tim?
Sure, I'll take that. The way the law is written right now is that the municipalities cannot enforce mask laws or anything else unless the governor declares a state of emergency. So unless and until the governor does that, city council has no role to play there. So if the governor does declare a state of emergency, then we'll have to deal with it at that time, but I don't foresee that happening.
Thank you. Nathan?
I have to agree. I mean, that is the law. That's the way it is, and we have to abide by that. And personally, I think that's the way it should be. I think our businesses know best how to run their business and keep it safe for their employees and for their customers.
Yuki?
Yeah, I'm going to concur. And also, even if we did have this ability to shut down businesses for COVID-19, we're in year 3 of this being around, with vaccines being available for the past 2 years. By this point, if you don't have your vaccine, then that's your decision. But if you do, then that helps with your protection, and it should be up to the businesses whether or not they would shut down for that, and they should decide about the disinfecting and who is not there for their time. So, but by this point, while it is still a concern and is definitely still a problem, it's not like it's gone away. The world keeps moving. And I say that as someone who is very strict about COVID, for that first year and a half.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for closing statements. We'll start with Yuki.
So, thank you for listening to us ramble on about what our opinions are of different things in the city of Stillwater. I think we have great choices. I think the main thing is just, what perspective do you want to come out there? I know I have the perspective of the younger person, and I've seen the struggling in Stillwater, and I know we have people who work with them up here as well, but I am or was that person, and very close friends with people who are like that. And I want to make sure that our city is a place that anyone can thrive. And as someone who, like I said, is young, who's starting a career here, who likes Stillwater, I want to make sure that our city's goal of keeping young people and growing and making sure we're inviting, keeps happening. And if you agree with that, then I would like to be the young person who gives that opinion and gives that perspective on what we do, because that's important. And the city won't grow without that. So especially with how many young people that come here and make memories and have the city make a lasting impact on that, let's bring in more. Let's Let's have them have have Stillwater have a permanent impact on them.
Nathan?
It's up to you. I mean, we've said our thing. It's up to you. Vote. You've got choices. Go dig up the dirt on us. Look at us. Inside and out. I mean, good, bad, and ugly. But go vote. That's the main thing. And turn to your neighbors around your neighborhood. Tell them to go vote. But get out and vote. That's where it is. It's up to you. I mean, we've said our piece. Now, you, go vote.
Okay, Tim?
As I started, I'm going to tell you that, first of all, my name is Tim Harden. Please remember that. I have corporate background, small business background as an educator, which is a three-pronged background, which I think would be very useful for the city. This is my lifelong home. When I told you we moved here 7 years ago with the plan to be our lifelong home, that is the case. One thing I would like to see the city focus on that we've talked about is the quality of life. Provide a little more entertainment, a little more opportunity for our citizens to have some enjoyment and to try to keep the young folks in town. So I will agree with Yuki on that. So again, go vote, Tim Harden.
Okay.
Yuki Clark.
All right, I need to make an announcement. Could you, the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma has a State Question 820 forum scheduled for February 7th at 7 at OCT Tulsa, and it will be live streamed. And also, I want to thank everyone for coming. We really had a real good turnout. And you can vote early next Thursday and Friday at the election board in the Gloria Hesser room from 8 to 6 p.m. And then the regular voting is February 14th at your precinct. So thank you all for coming, and have a good evening.
Thank you all for coming.